Click the bell, turn on all notifications, and subscribe for around-the-clock WWE news in real time. The home of the most consistent and dedicated breaking news in WWE, SeanzViewEnt, is here for you. Like, comment, and share today.
Vince McMahon, viewers. Vince McMahon spotted backstage for tonight's edition of the Blue Brain of SmackDown on the USA Network has just detonated a brand new wave of WWE dirt sheet chaos because the second that Vince's name gets tied to current WWE television, the whole conversation absolutely changes. Not a little bit. Not quietly, and certainly, viewers, certainly not subtly. No, everything changes. The dynamics, the performance, the enhancements, the drama. And that is exactly why this is not just some random nothing burger rumor around social media. Remember, for more videos like this, like, comment, subscribe, click the bell, and turn on all notifications. This is the kind of backstage smoke that gets people whispering fast, posting faster, and connecting the dots before the show is even halfway done. Because if Vince McMahon was really backstage at SmackDown tonight, then the question stops being casual immediately. And we're going to get into what this means, what this is going to happen, the planning, why Vince is there, what is he going to say, what is he going to do. We're going to get into all of that because it would just be boring if we said, oh, Vince McMahon, he's backstage at SmackDown. That could mean anything. Well, what was Vince McMahon there to do? Well, who was he there to see? Why tonight? Why now? What was so important that Vince McMahon needed to be in the building this close to WrestleMania 42? And now let me tell you something, right, ladies and gentlemen. This really begs the question because, you know what? This isn't the first time this week that Vince McMahon's name has been brought up or that Vince McMahon's name has been seen or brought up on the dirt sheets, the websites, or TV, because we're going to get into the proof. We're going to get into the evidence. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. Because now this is not just a sighting. Now, this is a signal flare, viewers, because this is where the story is going to start to get real dirty. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, become a channel member today. Now, this is one of those stories where the halfway whispers can get louder than the official script. And you already know how this works in the WWE, viewers, fans, subscribers, and most importantly, my channel members. You already know how this works. One little backstage detail leaks out, then suddenly the entire fan base starts treating every promo, every segment, and every camera shot, and every finish like it is part of some bigger hidden drama. That is exactly where this is headed, seemingly. Okay, that's what it seems like. That's what it feels like to the brash and the brazen. Because the most important part of this story is not just Vince being backstage. No, viewers. The most important part is what Vince being seen backstage may have set off behind the curtain. And once you start thinking that way, the story gets a whole lot nastier. Because now, viewers, now the rumor mill asks the one question that the WWE never wants out in the open. Did something go wrong? Now, viewers, fans, and subscribers, let's slow this down for a moment. Let's just back up for a minute because, again, we do official WWE breaking news. We are your number one leader for entertainment talk because there's a reason why this show's called Sean's View Entertainment. Vince McMahon is not just another old WWE name from the past. Oh, no, he's not just some relic, although he's a little old, right? He's getting there up in age, but he is not some retired relic fans only talk about when they are telling stories about 20 years ago. No, Vince is one of those names that will change the temperature of the room. So when the name gets attached to the SmackDown backstage chatter for tonight's episode, we're just a couple weeks away from WrestleMania. In the middle of WrestleMania season, people do not shrug that off. They start assuming things. They assume panic. They assume rewrites. They assume pressure. They assume somebody backstage is unhappy. They assume that something could have very well shifted. And honestly, the WWE has trained fans to think just that, ladies and gentlemen. This company, the WWE, has spent years teaching the audience that backstage politics matter, late changes matter, creative pivots matter, and hidden power struggles matter. So the second Vince McMahon shows up in the rumor cycle, this whole thing stops feeling like gossip for gossip's sake and starts feeling like one of those stories can blow up overnight. Now, again, we're just hours away from SmackDown tonight, and we're going to get into the presence. We're going to get into the planning. We're going to get into the creative. We're going to get into all of that and what that could mean and what this could amount to. And what makes it even hotter is that Vince's name has already been floating around WWE Talk again this week alone, okay, and lately, okay? So now this rumor lands on top of an audience that was already primed to react hard to that. Again, Vince McMahon's name has been used, blasted all over social media all week. It was referenced on Monday Night Raw. Because now, guys, it doesn't just become, oh, wow, Vince was maybe backstage. Now it is, why is Vince's name suddenly back in the air again? Why now? Why around SmackDown? Why this close to WrestleMania 42? Well, this is how the dirt sheet smoke turns into a full-blown inferno. And here is the part that should really get your attention. The moment this stopped being a story about a possible sighting and started becoming a story about Vince being backstage for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, that is the moment that this thing turned absolutely nuclear. Because Vince was seen in one story, Vince was there because of something happened, is a completely different animal again. Because Vince was seen is one story, and Vince was there because something happened. Again, a completely different animal of another species, okay? A new breed unleashed, guys. That is the dirt sheet sweet spot right there. That is where the hallway whispers get magnified. That is where every weird segment later on starts looking suspicious. That is when fans begin reading SmackDown like a crime scene instead of a wrestling show. And if you are into WWE rumors, backstage whispers, dirt sheet fallout, and breaking wrestling drama multiple times a day, the second it starts moving, subscribe right now, click that bell, and turn on all notifications so you do not miss the next update. Because this is exactly the kind of story that gets even crazier the longer the night goes on. And trust me, the nastiest part of this is still coming, viewers. The nastiest part, the details are still unraveling. This is why we do multiple videos a day. Because here is the core bombshell, viewers. Here is the core bombshell. The chatter, the whispers, the dirt sheet smoke, the backstage talk are all centered around Vince McMahon reportedly being backstage at SmackDown tonight. And that sighting alone has already thrown a brand new cloud over WWE heading into WrestleMania 42. That is the reveal. Vince backstage, SmackDown tonight, WrestleMania season, and now everybody starts wondering what was so unstable behind the scenes that Vince's presence suddenly matters again in 2026. Because once Vince is part of that current conversation, that does not stay small. Suddenly, the question becomes even sharper. Was there a meeting? Was somebody upset with the direction? Was there concern over a promo, a finish, a match, a top star, a WrestleMania plan? That is where the story starts feeling dangerous for World Wrestling Entertainment. Because now this isn't just about who was in the building. Now this is about whether WWE has another hidden panic point brewing while pretending all is calm on television. And make no mistake, this company is very good at smiling on camera while the walls shake backstage. That is why this rumor absolutely has legs. Because if Vince McMahon is back there, even briefly, okay, people automatically assume one of two things. Either this was nothing and fans are overreacting, or WWE has a backstage issue serious enough that Vince McMahon's presence suddenly feels a part of the story. And let's be honest, you already know which version people are going to run with. The dirt sheets are not built on everything is probably fine. They are built on tension, on whispers, on strange timing, our suspicious appearances, or that gut feeling that something bigger is happening just outside the camera frame. That is why this is absolutely hot and absolutely crucial, and that is why there's more details being unveiled right now. That doesn't mean just because Vince McMahon may or could be backstage at SmackDown, that doesn't mean Vince McMahon will appear on TV or that he'll be on camera tonight. But again, why else would he be there? What else could be going on? Again, viewers, take this with a grain of salt. However, now it starts looking like a pressure cooker. Because once you see it through that lens, SmackDown stops looking like just another stop on the road to WrestleMania. And if that pressure cooker pops open even a little bit on tonight's show, this story does not stay a rumor. It becomes a full-blown narrative by tomorrow morning, ladies and gentlemen. Because this is the second rumor landed. Again, the second, I will get into this. The second that this rumor landed, all eyes on SmackDown tonight changed. Now people are not just watching the show, they are studying it. And this is on a night where Randy Orton will be in St. Louis, Missouri, his backyard, his home away from home, the Viper Randy Orton, the volatile one himself. They are going to be watching every promo, every entrance, every finish, every camera cut, every weird pause, every awkward line, and every segment that feels a little too polished or just a little too rushed. And the second that something feels off, boom, fans are going to say, there it is. Vince had something to do with it. That is what makes this rumor so dangerous. It creates a lens. And once that lens exists, ladies and gentlemen, WWE loses control of the conversation very quickly. But now, even normal stuff can look suspicious. A shorter segment tonight on SmackDown on the USA Network, the blue brand, suspicious. A changed finish tonight, suspicious. Booking on the fly, pivoting as the show's going on, feels different, feels suspicious. A WrestleMania tease that zigzags instead of goes straight, suspicious. That's how it all alludes to Vince McMahon potentially being backstage tonight for SmackDown. That is how these stories explode. Not because WWE confirms a thing, not because the rumor infects the way fans watch the show. Now let's get one step closer, guys, because we go deeper. We actually entertain you. We put the heart and the hustle, no matter if it's true or not, whether it's going to happen or not. We put every single thing we have into every single video, okay? Because we're going to go even deeper. We're going to go more elusive. We're going to go more brash and brazen because remember, without you, there is no Sean's View. Because this is where the dirt sheet stuff gets especially juicy and, well, a little bit volatile and sometimes a little bit fun. Once Vince is rumored to be backstage tonight, this stops being a production story. This becomes a locker room perception story. That is when people start wondering who knew he was there, who saw him, who talked to him, who got tense, who suddenly had a different vibe backstage, who started acting a little bit differently. Because in wrestling, perception is everything, okay? One whispered sighting becomes hallway chatter. Hallway chatter becomes talent gossip. Talent gossip becomes insider noise. Insider noise becomes online smoke. And online smoke becomes tomorrow's backstage report. And we're here to report it all. Rumors, news, speculation, gossip, hearsay. We do it all on the brash and the brazen. That is the pipeline. That is the machine. And that is exactly why one Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the Mr. McMahon rumor, can hijack the whole WWE conversation in a hurry. Now imagine this in WrestleMania 42 season. Imagine the top stars, the top matches, the top finishes, the top creative directions all sitting under that cloud. That is why this story does not feel harmless, because once Vince is tied to the room, every top name connected to the WrestleMania instantly becomes fair game for the rumor mill. And that is when things get very nasty, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to get real dirty right here and right now. This is where we are absolutely going to escalate it. We are going to dominate it. Because the next layer of this is absolutely obvious. Okay, it's poignant. What does this mean for WrestleMania 42? That is the important question. That is the crucial matter here. That is the $1 million dirt sheet question. Did Vince show up backstage because something on the Mania side is wobbling? Did he show up because there is pressure around a top direction? Did he show up because WWE is trying to lock something down before it leaks wider? And again, I am not sitting here telling you all of this is confirmed, but that is exactly how the speculation grows. That is exactly how the whispers get teeth. Because if Vince is backstage this close to WrestleMania, the audience is naturally going to start assuming that this is bigger than one night and bigger than one segment. Now suddenly the imagination goes crazy. People start wondering if a top match changed, if a finish got protected, if a promo got rewritten, if somebody got cold feet, if the company is scrambling to keep a lid on something. That is the dirt sheet fuel right there. And WWE made this worse for itself years ago by conditioning fans to believe that last-minute rewrites, backstage politics, and hidden pressures and emergency pivots are just part of the company's DNA. Now, I know we're operating a little bit differently under the Triple H era. However, so now fans do not think maybe it is nothing. They think, okay, what blew up? That is the real problem plaguing the WWE. The true gasp. And there's not only a gasp of people, there's also a true trust gap in the WWE. The audience already assumes where there is Vince, there's smoke. That is probably some kind of fire, even if nobody can fully see it yet. And once that kind of thought process gets into the bloodstream of wrestling fandom, this story starts living on its own. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at that point, WWE is not fighting one rumor anymore. Oh, no. It is fighting perception. It is fighting vibes. And it is fighting that feeling that something bigger is about to go down. Something could be moving in the dark. And that is where Vince McMahon's story hits different than almost anybody else in the company. Because Vince is not just a person in these stories. He is a symbol, ladies and gentlemen. He represents control, influence, pressure, backstage power, last-minute change, creative interference, and that feeling that the real story is not what you are seeing on screen, if you know what I mean. That is why his name carries so much dirt sheet gravity. Every time Vince gets attached to current WWE talk, fans start wondering if WWE can ever really escape his shadow. Can they? That is the biggest question behind all of this. Because this is not just, was Vince there? This is also, why does Vince still feel such a live wire to the WWE conversation? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is quite simple in my opinion. But remember, this show's not about you. Wait a minute, really? Show's not about you? No. I threw you off there. That was a Russo swerve, right? Russo swerve. No, this show's not about me, guys. As we all know, we put you in the driver's seat. You guys are the direction. You guys are the voice. You guys are the choice of SeanzView. You guys are the foundation. But again, the answer is simple. Because Vince's name still hijacks the room, still hijacks the headlines, and still hijacks the imagination of the WWE universe, the WWE fan base. And that is why this story is hot right now, and that is why it is a scorcher just hours before SmackDown. It touches power, it touches WrestleMania, it touches backstage politics, and it touches that delicate dirt sheet instinct, that delicious. Fans have that company. They've been hiding real drama just off camera. That is the catnip for wrestling fans. And once the catnip gets out there, people are not letting it go after one night. They are going to keep it digging, keep posting, keep guessing, keep connecting the dots. Because this type of story does not die. Instead, ladies and gentlemen, it mutates. And tonight, if Vince McMahon is indeed backstage for SmackDown, tomorrow it becomes, who did he meet? Then it becomes what changed. Then it becomes who got affected. Then it becomes what Mania direction got touched. Then it becomes who was really steering the ship when the pressure gets high. That is how stories survive around the evolution, guys. It is all about the evolution. And that is why this one matters, even if nothing explodes publicly tonight. Because the damage, well, quite frankly, it's already done. Remember to like, hype, subscribe, click the bell, turn on all notifications if you're still here. The rumor is already in the bloodstream. The doubt is already in the room. The fan base is already watching with suspicion. And real quick, if you want to support SeanzView Entertainment, remember to hit that super thanks button and become a channel member today. That helps support, bring the show, the backstage fallout, the dirt sheet smoke, the fantasy booking, and the breaking WWE chaos every single day. Because this is the exact kind of story that can go from a whisper to a wildfire with just one more leak, ladies and gentlemen. So now here is what everybody should be watching for tonight on SmackDown's USA Network. Watch for anything unusual. Anything that feels rewritten, anything that feels overly protected, anything that feels like WWE suddenly shifted gears. Watch for weird presentation, weird pacing, weird finishes, weird tension in a promo, weird title clues or little clues that the company is trying to hide panic within confidence. With confidence, ladies and gentlemen. Because if even one rumor or even one more piece of backstage chatter slips out after SmackDown, this goes from interesting rumor to full-blown WWE crisis story in a hurry. And once that happens, this thing blows wide open. So here is where things stand, ladies and gentlemen. I want to bring you up to speed and up to date. Vince McMahon reportedly being spotted backstage at SmackDown has already kicked up a fresh storm of rumor, dirt sheet smoke, inside chatter, and WrestleMania paranoia. And whether it turns into a tiny footnote or a massive backstage scandal depends entirely on what happens next. So now I want to hear from each and every one of you. Do you think Vince McMahon being backstage at SmackDown is really nothing? Or do you think this is the start of something much bigger behind the scenes for WrestleMania 42 as it inches closer? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And for more WWE rumors, gossip, backstage fallout, fantasy booking, and breaking dirt sheet chaos, subscribe, click the bell, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a breaking upload. And if the story gets even messier after SmackDown, you already know who's here for you. Subscribe.